Director Comey was here. He was very forthcoming and candid in answering his questions with specificity about Secretary Clinton, and he did not refuse to answer any of those questions based on the fact that there was legal prohibition that kept him from doing it. Today, you have indicated several times that you wouldn't respond to some of those questions with specificity. Is there any legal prohibition that you have that Director Comey did not have that prohibits you from answering those questions with some degree of specificity?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to that, Congressman. I think it's important to note that the Director and I had very different roles in this investigation and therefore very different amounts of information about this investigation. I am speaking about the information that I received, which again, as I've noted, was the team recommendation. Director Comey was speaking from his position as someone who was more directly involved in the investigation. I understand that you may have different information. My question, though, is are there any legal prohibitions on you that Director Comey did not have? Well, as I've indicated, it would not be appropriate in my role to discuss the specific facts and the law. Is the legal prohibition against that other than the fact that you just don't have the same knowledge about the case that Director Comey had? We typically actually do not provide the level of detail that Director Comey did. He chose to provide that level of information and detail. Or is that just a choice that you make in not disclosing that information? Well, as indicated, we obviously are not allowed to discuss certain types of information, for example, grand jury information in any matter. We're not talking about grand jury information here, are we? What I want to know is, tell me, is there a legal reason that prohibits you from giving us information, or is that just a choice you have made? Congressman, as I've indicated, the Director and I had very different roles in this investigation. So his level of detail is significantly different from mine, and I would not be able to provide you with that same level of detail. Because you don't have the information, not because there's a legal prohibition. In addition to that, in part of my role as Attorney General, I would not be to these discussions typically. We have taken the step of providing more information on this matter than in others. I just need to know if there's a legal prohibition that prohibits you from disclosing information to this committee, or is that a choice you have made? It would depend upon the nature of the information. Certainly there would be. Questions that you've had, is there any legal prohibition that would prohibit you from giving the same information that Director Comey has given? Well, with respect to the source of that information, if it came from the grand jury, that would be a legal prohibition. With respect to opinions about the matter of law, that's a different issue. Let the record say that there is no legal prohibition that can be cited here. On June 27th, the Supreme Court of the United States gave your department a rather stellar rebuke in your prosecution of Governor Bob McDonnell. Having looked at that and the basis that you essentially, your department launched everything you had against a Republican governor who everyone agreed had violated no state law. They took a federal law, and you had cited, looking at statute, relevant case law, and history, there was no relevant case law to suggest that setting up a meeting constituted a crime, no history, statutory history that suggested it was a crime, and yet your department put everything it had in prosecuting that governor. Having looked at what the Supreme Court has now said, do you believe that prosecution was a mistake? Certainly, I believe that the prosecutors who worked on that matter investigated it, presented it to a grand jury, and received an indictment. We, of course, have, as presented in our papers before the Supreme Court, a choice which you have not made in Secretary Clinton's case. It would be, can you tell us now, looking at that and the way you interpreted that statute, was that a mistake? Congressman, with respect to the investigation of the former governor of Virginia, I don't have a comment on that. We have accepted the results of the Supreme Court, and will, of course, be reviewing the case in the light of that. Then my final question, then, as time is running out, is at a governor of Virginia that you launched everything this department had against to destroy him and to prosecute him. Can you tell me the federal nexus you had in that case and compare that to the federal nexus against Secretary Clinton in national security of this country, which you refused to bring to a grand jury or for indictment to see if, in fact, one is justified? Congressman, I don't have a comment on the McDonnell case except to refer you to the pleadings in that for a discussion of the law there. Can you compare the federal nexus between the two cases for us, please? Congressman, I don't have a comparison between those two cases for you. And that's rather disappointing because the national security of the country is rather important to the country. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.